Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by sharing my own adventures, my own journey of growing my own food in my allotment and my own garden. But this is a learning curve. After 30 years of growing my own food, I still learn something new every single day. Now, one of the most important things I've always said about gardening is that it needs to be fun. It needs to be enjoyable. This weekend, we have taken a very different approach in that I've not been doing any gardening per se. I have been at Gardener's World Live, which is an annual event. It's one that I really look forward to going to every single year. I tend to go because it's a great show for every type of gardening. If you haven't heard of Gardener's World, it is a long-running TV show and magazine here in the UK. And they do an annual show. They also do a spring and autumn show as well. I said about it being fun. Well, this one weekend is one of the best weekends for fun and getting out of the garden while still doing a bit of gardening at the same time. So, what did we get up to? Well, first of all, one of the big things that I think is so important is some of the talks that are going on. And one of my very good friends, somebody I should have on the podcast a little bit more often, was running one of the stages, and we managed to catch up with him. So let's start off there and find out how it started. Well, one of the great things that I love about Gardener's World is the talks. And one particular stage that I often visit is run by my good friend Ade Sellars, aka the Good Life Gardener, or as you may also know him as Agents of Field. Is that right?
That's right. That's a name I haven't gone by in a long time. But yes, that's both myself and my lovely wife.
I think when we had you on the podcast in the past, you were still Agents of Field. That was probably back in COVID times, if I remember.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that came about as basically just a bit of fun between myself and my wife, that we established ourselves, got into the world of gardening, learnt about the world of gardening, and it got us to change our whole way of life, our lifestyle, our careers. And we kind of thought when we moved to the countryside, that's an end of one chapter and the start of a new one. So we've kind of finished it there on a high.
Oh, fantastic. Because you moved out from London to Suffolk.
Yeah.
And you have a beautiful kitchen garden, I have to say.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, like I said, you have these dreams and then there's a moment in your life you think, I need to do this. I need to, the cosmos is talking to me. I need to change things up. I need, to restart, make a change. And the whole part of giving up a career, living in London for 20 years and moving to the countryside and building a kitchen garden from scratch was a dream. And it is a dream. And I'm very lucky to do it.
Now, I find this interesting you call it a kitchen garden, because that's what I call mine, because that's what it is. But some people say the word kitchen garden can be a bit off-putting.
Yeah, I know. But then, when I had my allotment, and this is going back many, many years, and you go, well, I used to work in the city, working in television, and you speak to creative types, and they say, you've got an allotment. That's very old school. That's part of it, do you like the good life? There was all those sort of stereotypes. But then it's like, over the years, you watch how allotments become on trend again, how much joy it brings, how allotments now front and centre of everything. So I'm just going to do my bit for my kitchen garden and bring them back as a place of positivity.
And I'm going to do the same.
Yes.
I've been calling my garden the kitchen garden. It was something else for a period.
What would you call it?
I called it the kitchen garden. It did go through a modern victory garden for a period.
Okay.
That was COVID times, but now it's a kitchen garden.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. If you hear a kitchen garden and people are thinking about building something in a garden, that's what I like to do. My garden isn't massive. My garden isn't the size of Monty's, but it's very productive. We grow 12 months of a year. And part of what I do is I like to show people who are interested, who have a passion for kitchen gardening, that you can grow. You can grow most things in a small space. And if it puts me under the banner of kitchen garden, I'm very happy to do that. So long as I can, there's someone out there who goes, yes, I want a kitchen garden.
Absolutely. I've actually had emails about people who are doing exactly the same thing. So our inspiration goes on forever. But we are here at Gardener's World Live. You're obviously running the In Conversation stage, which you're doing a fantastic job, of course. But I think this is the right point to talk about the show itself, because I come to this show every single year. For me, this is the show for the gardeners.
Yes, I mean, definitely. Coming here, and this is my second year, I've been lucky enough to host in conversation with Stage. And so you come here and you look at the gardens, but for me, I'm also looking at the people that come through the door. And what makes this really special is accessible. It's like everyone's on the same playing field. Everyone's welcome. If you want to have a go at doing a show garden, you can submit your application and you can do it. You go to some organisations, some garden shows, they're not always embracing. And I think the beauty of Gardeners World Live is we're all in it together, and there's a real sense of community. And, this morning, we've just done a first talk of the day, and as always, the audiences, they're lovely, they're fantastic.
Yeah, but the mix here is what I always said is what I like. You've got the vegetable gardens, you've got the kitchen gardens, you've got the flower gardens, you've got the orchids gardens, you've got the indoor gardens. Yeah. You've got the gardener's tools. You've got everything here, which is something I really enjoy.
You've also got people that have never gardened, people that garden part-time, people that garden full-time, people that love gardening. You've got gardening, widows where their husband or wife is in the garden all day and they just have to tag along. But you've got everyone here, and everyone comes with different experiences and different knowledge, but everyone's willing to share. So, for example, we can be on the stage talking about something, and an audience member will want to say something, and we love that because that's what we want, and we have a conversation and we've learned something from the audience, and that's what this show is about. It's give and take and sharing of knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one question I do want to ask you, because you're here for a few days.
Yeah.
How have you prepared your kitchen garden for you to be away in the middle of this summer?
It's my lovely wife. It's all unfortunately down to I must say unfortunately, it's not me unfortunately, it's unfortunately I've put this on my wife but she's a gardener herself, so she knows what to look out for, she knows when to water. We have evening discussions of, the A plan, the B plan, if it's going to be sunny tomorrow, what needs watering. So, I'm just very lucky that I do have Sophie, and she kind of knows where to go, what to water, what to look out for, and what to harvest, because we're harvesting at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, harvests are coming in thick and thin. Is there anything particularly you're harvesting at the moment?
Well, my wife is a fantastic cook, and so she obviously, I'm lucky enough I grow it, and then she'll take it and make something beautiful from it. But at the moment we're harvesting kale, we're harvesting the spinach, we're harvesting the lettuce, spring onions, early carrots. I'm in my head, I'm doing a checklist. Strawberries, raspberries are just starting to come through, gooseberries are almost there, black currants are almost there, red currants are almost there, eating the rhubarb, just finished now, asparagus is done for the season. Yeah, I'm sure it's... Oh, cucumbers. There we go. This week, just as I was leaving, did our first cucumber.
You're making me hungry now.
So am I.
Ade, as always, it's a pleasure. I know we talk quite often anyway, but good to see you.
Good to see you, sir, and thank you again for coming. Oh, I should say, and thank you for the treats. I will say to your people that listen, every year that I'm here, Richard, bless him, comes along with a bag of treats for me. He's not paid to do it, he does it out of love. And that's one of the many reasons why I love him so much.
Cheers, buddy. Right, let's go see what else we can find. Well, somebody who's been doing a talk on stage is the lovely Adam, who also has his own podcast as well.
I do indeed. And you've called me lovely, that's very nice.
I try and be kind sometimes. But I really liked your talk today because you were talking about some cost-saving methods in the garden, which I think is so important, especially in the current climate. I say current climate, but I think it happens every so many years as well. Just for the audience who listen who didn't get to hear you talk, what were your methods for saving money?
So, just to kind of preface it, the reason that I love saving money in the garden is because I started gardening during lockdown properly, and I genuinely think that we all forget the garden centres were closed, the nurseries were closed, you couldn't even get compost at the supermarket, you couldn't get any of this stuff. So we had to be really, not frugal, but we had to be resourceful at the start if you were gardening during lockdown. And I remember going to supermarket and finding a lovely big geum, didn't know what geum was at the time, but thinking, oh, this is lovely. And then literally went home, opened Instagram, and there was a video of someone dividing a geum. It was as though my phone had known that I'd bought this plant. And then suddenly I kind of threw myself into dividing plants and taking cuttings and all that kind of stuff. And it's just become a bit of an obsession, I suppose, trying to save money, but also try and make plants go further than they're intended to go. So the things that I've been talking about have been about the Chelsea chop. So around now you can cut back a load of your herbaceous perennials, things like you can cut back salvias, Achillea, geums, all those kind of things. You can cut right back to the base, and what you'll get is, instead of having a few large flowers now, in a few weeks' time you'll have lots of smaller flowers. So you're making your plants go further, basically. So cutting back, doing the Chelsea chop, taking cuttings, how to root cuttings, really, really simple things to do that I think to a new gardener or someone that perhaps hasn't done it before, it can be quite a scary thing to do, and it can feel quite brutal, I suppose. But I love just buying a lovely big plant and knowing that that's actually about 4 plants, and I can chop it right in half and plant those out in the garden, and I've got 4 plants for the price of 1.
That's something we do promote a lot on the Veg Grower Podcast, especially when you get those bargain discounts, like buying plants for 10p. And,
oh God, yeah. I love nothing more than when you go to a supermarket and they've got that god awful trolley of stuff with the little yellow and red stickers on that say, no 50p, and it was like £3, and you're like, quid's in, because as gardeners we've kind of got all the secrets, and we kind of know that actually those plants are fine, and all they needed was a bit of TLC. So you take them home, cut them back, give them some new life, and you've got yourself a bargain. And those bargain bins at the garden centres as well, where where they've got like the whoop stickers on or whatever, that's like a gold mine to a gardener, because it's stuff that would otherwise just be going in the bin. So yeah, it's a winning combo.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that it doesn't go in the bin when we do that, because it's just resourceful with us.
Yeah.
Now, something else you spoke about, which I was kind of interested to talk more about. It's not something I personally do, but the chop and drop.
Yes. So you can look at this kind of 2 ways, I suppose. Some people will just, in autumn, when when we kind of stereotypically cut back the garden, they will chop back their plants, leave them on the ground, and let them to just kind of rot away. Is that going to be too much?
Sorry, carry on.
Okay.
Sorry.
Let them to rot away. Or what you can do is cut them back, chop them up really, really small, and then scatter them on the soil, and you're helping to kind of mulch the ground. You're helping to suppress weeds. He's doing it on purpose, isn't it? You're helping to suppress weeds, mulch the ground, and all the nutrients from those plants are just going back into the soil. So you can do that with any plants. You could do it with veg as well, to be honest. Just it's kind of a green way of mulching without having to buy compost or mulch or whatever. So the thing is, though, I am inherently a lazy gardener. That's the thing, and I'm trying to say that I do this grand thing that's chop and drop or whatever, but it's not really. I'm just being lazy, and I'm just letting it lay on the ground. It'll rot away, and also with some of the kind of really big herbaceous perennials. So I think I'm trying to think of things that you would cut back that there'd be loads and loads of stems of, but kind of salvias, once they've gone woody and the flowers are dropping off and stuff like that, you cut those back and just leave those on the surface. Yes, they'll eventually rot and mulch the compost, mulch the soil, but they're also creating habitats for insects as well. So I tend to cut back and either put it in piles where the insects can use them, or I'll chop them up really fine and just scatter them all over the surface.
Yeah. I mean, that's again one of the problems that many gardeners are. We try to be too tidy. Nature's not tidy.
No, and I think the thing about this kind of old adage of putting the garden to bed for winter and all that kind of stuff, and tucking it up for hibernation kind of thing, it's just not a thing anymore. There's going to be lots of gardeners, no critique at all, that really want a prim and proper garden, and over winter they love to cut everything back and whatever, but I think that the benefits of not cutting back and not doing all that prim and proper stuff far outweigh any negatives of it. And I think the brilliant thing I'm thinking about things like alliums. Love alliums, absolutely love them. They're the best value for money plant that you can get. You plant them, they flower, and then even when they've lost that purple tinge, or the white tinge if you've got white ones, they still look great, and they're statuesque, and they give some structure to a garden. But not only that, rather than cutting them back in winter when most people want to because they look dead, you leave them over winter. When you get a frost, they look gorgeous, and those seed heads are just providing food for birds all over winter. So there's so many benefits to not cutting back your garden and not having this kind of idea that everything has got to be perfect and tidy.
Yeah, totally agree. One of the things that you said, you don't get many problems with slugs and snails, and I think that's why, because it brings in nature.
Yeah. I think so. I think we just don't. It's not particularly wet in our garden either, so we're quite lucky in that aspect that we're not really attracting slugs and things anyway. They'll be there, but we've also incredibly lucky to have a big family of hedgehogs in the garden as well, so they'll deal with a lot of it. The birds will deal with a lot of it. Also got a cat that tends to just bring them in the house if he finds them, so that's another reason that they're not in the garden. So yeah, we don't have that much of a problem, but I think, like you say, that's another reason why. Yeah.
Now, because we are Gardeners World Live, I think we better give that a bit of a mention, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
What's been your highlight this year?
Well, I haven't had a tremendous amount of time to look around, but had a little bit of time this morning before it started, and had a quick look at the borders, of which all are gorgeous, and they just... I know this is a cliche, but they just get better and better and better every year. But there's a garden, I don't know what kind of garden it is, whether it's a showcase garden or not, but it's the Nectary. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's all bee and pollinator themed, and it's amazing. And it's one of those ones I had the real fortune to go on it this morning and have a look, but it's one of those ones where you start to look and every little detail has been thought of. There's a little tiled bit inside the greenhouse that's in the middle, and they've purposely put cracks in the tiles to make it really look like it's a proper weathered and used greenhouse. So the Nectary garden is my highlight, definitely.
Well, it's interesting that Adam mentioned the Nectary garden there, because it was also one of my favourite gardens as well. We've got an interview coming up with the creator of that garden in just a moment. But before that, I'm just going to ask you if you're enjoying this podcast. I know it's a little bit different to what we normally do, but if you are enjoying this podcast, then please do leave us a rate and review on your podcast provider. Only takes you a few seconds, but it means the world to us. But not only that, if you are also enjoying this podcast and you want to help support the work that we do, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. The Supporters Club genuinely helps keep the wheels on this podcast running. For just £5 a month, it gives you access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts, and you also get our monthly seed pack. And in that seed pack, you receive a collection of seeds that can be sown in that very month, and our mini newspaper, which gives you a few instructions on how to grow those seeds and a bit of a tick list and a few other ideas or things that are going on in that very month. Now, to give you a bit of an idea of what we've been sowing over this last week, we have been sowing some Mizuna and some kale, both of which are some fantastic plants to grow. Kale, of course, being it can be used as a cut and come again, or it can be used to grow into strong plants ready for winter harvesting. One of my favourites, I've got to say, kale is an incredibly strong, hardy plant, and we spoke about that at the beginning of this month. Now, if that sounds like something you would be interested in, then please head to veggrowerpodcast.co.uk to sign up and find out more. But let's head to the Nectary garden. Of course, show gardens are one of the centerpieces here at Gardeners World Live, and I've selected my favourite. It is called the Nectary, and it's created by Kate. And Kate's actually here with me. Kate, tell us about your garden.
So the Nectary for me is all about bridging the June gap for beekeepers. I am an apiarist myself, and for most people, if they see bees in their garden, they'll often notice that at the end of, you get your spring flowers, they finish, and summer flowers haven't quite begun. And for beekeepers, that's known as the June gap. So this garden was chosen and selected by bees and has been planted up by my amazing Nectary team and myself. And we're surrounded by native solitary bumblebees, and I also have my hive at the back. But the principles underpinning everything here is small artisanal businesses, UK-based businesses, and craftspeople. And you can see it all around the garden, from the beautiful stained glass to the willow work, the coppicing teams, the sustainable aggregate from Shell on Earth, and Cumbrian wildflowers that are adorning just in front of the beehive at the back of our garden.
Fantastic. So I like to sort of paint a picture for our audience. It's about 3 metres by 3 metres?
So it's actually 8 metres by 8 metres.
Oh,
it's
wow.
64 metres squared. So it surpasses what would normally be classed as a showcase garden. This is the size of a show garden. It increased in size on our site visit, and when we came to site for building, it had increased by another 8 metres from there. So I am nothing if not creative, and we've made it work.
Yes, and what I like, so down the left-hand side, you do have these sort of...
So it's stripped oak, and this is provided by a bit of a rare breed of coppicer, a female coppicer called Twiggy. And it's beautiful stripped oak, and we've used the natural crux in the oak to actually form the supports for the top bars. And we've used macrame, handmade by a macrame artist, to use as our P supports. And we've also used beautiful willow birds to murmurate around the garden, which are actually attached to these as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unique. And then you've obviously attached some string, but they look like string that's came off something to grow your runner beans up as well, which, again, I really, really like that. Just little touches of something a bit original.
Well, we've had a lot of really lovely feedback because it is just something a little bit different rather than just having plain twine up and down. We've used sustainable nut-seen macrame, or macrame as they call it, because they're a Scottish company, and we have adorned these beautiful structures with it, and they'll last for around 2 years. They're compostable, they're completely natural, and I think it's just a really beautiful way to kind of frame that space, still allow light through, and use it to support something. So it doesn't matter what size of space you have. I feel like you can make each individual space really beautiful by just adding a little something extra.
Absolutely. And then down the front, you've got a collection of flowers and herbs, which all look lovely. You've got, if I'm not mistaken, shell on earth as a pathway.
Shell on earth. I think as an island, we should be utilising the resources that are surrounding us. And as a byproduct of the fishing industry, shell on earth is just a perfect aggregate to use for this purpose. It looks beautiful, it sparkles, it's so easy to use, and I just think it's the perfect choice for a sustainable garden like ours.
So just to paint a picture for those at home, the shell on earth is crushed white whelk shells. And as Kate has said, they glisten in the sun. They really sound quite unique. They're also really good as slug deterrent, so there's something we should look at using a lot more of. Now, the centrepiece, of course, your greenhouse, but you've done something really unique with the greenhouse.
Yeah, the greenhouse is, we've used Pueblo paint, which is vitrified on, which means it's baked onto the glass itself, just with pure sunshine. And I have painted and continued the murmuration of birds around the garden by hand painting birds along the roof panels and painting animals on the side, as well as wisteria and arch over the entire greenhouse itself. I've handmade some tiles that are in the centre of the greenhouse, and they're adorned with bees because at the end of the day, this garden's called the nectary for a reason, and the nectary is where nectar collectors, such as our bees, actually get their source of nectar from. And I wanted to ensure that they were represented in the greenhouse, and I carried that through with the Bradstone porcelain tiles, because they have anthracite, which matches the greenhouse, but also streaks of honey colour running through it as well. And none of it, that greenhouse has been a labour of love. But we haven't put any plastic membranes down. So we've done something quite unique in that we've used Horti wool, which is British sheep's wool. And I love supporting our British farmers. And that has been used as our membrane underneath. And we've not concreted it down because we want this to be reused after. In principle, because of our sustainability principles, I think it would be really lovely to be able to reuse as much as we can from this garden as possible.
Yeah, again, I never thought of using Horti wool like that, but...
It's never been used like that before.
No, that's really quite unique. Now, of course, one of the other key features that you've already mentioned is your apiary, which is something I'm really interested in. I've wanted to keep bees at home. Obviously, you do keep bees. Are they in a garden setting or what?
So I actually help do educational sessions, and I help keep bees for Manchester beekeepers. So they have around 60 hives there. But this is the first hive that I've had of my own, and I've waited some time for these beautiful bees, because bee genetics and actually getting really beautiful, calm bees is a bit of an art. So the wonderful Christine from Manchester Beekeepers has kindly gifted me a beautiful amber queen, and she is so calm, it's unbelievable. I mean, I've had some of her offspring sitting on me yesterday for 40 minutes fast asleep. They are just such wonderful, wonderful bees. But anyone that wants to go into beekeeping, I would recommend it, but join your local beekeeping association, not just because it's fantastic support, but you also get insurance, which is also really handy, and it's so much cheaper to borrow equipment from them. It can be an expensive hobby, but if you have the right support, you can share those costs with other people. But the actual beehive itself is made by Chris from the British Bee Company. And, oh wow, it's made of beautiful Canadian cedar, and it has a high oil content, which means that the sustainability-wise, it has a longevity of about 50 years.
You spoke about these bees being so calm. We were stood earlier, and those bees were flying around me and not bothered by me at all. No. I was absolutely amazed.
You've got to really have... Bee genetics is actually quite difficult to get. You can get quite naughty bees, but you can also get very, very calm bees if they're bred correctly. And these ones are just so relaxed. But I also think it helps that I'm not a panicker, and I don't really externally get stressed out. So if I'm nice and calm, they kind of reflect the beekeeper. So bees have the amazing ability to actually recognise faces. So these girls are aware, me going in on a daily basis or every few days just to check everything's going as planned. They get to know you like a friend.
Fantastic. It's making me think I need to look at getting bees again. Okay, this has been absolutely fantastic. As I said, this is my favourite garden. How did the judges score?
So we got a silver merit, which I'm really pleased about. Obviously, I would have loved even more for this garden because I think gold would have been a nice colour considering it's filled with honey. But I'm really pleased. As my first show garden and my first entrance into kind of gardener's world and designing, this is, it's an amazing achievement for myself and my team to have got this far, and I just hope the judges going forward in the future are able to really look at all the aspects of sustainability that we're trying to encourage and the impact that being more sustainable can have on our native wildlife, such as our solitary bees as well as our bumblebees and our incredible honeybees that they are a joy to look at, and everyone has been so excited finding out about them, and I'm really well supported by Manchester beekeepers who are in attendance at every opportunity. If you have any questions, no questions are silly ones, so just ask away.
Fantastic. Now if anybody wants to find out more about you, where can they follow you on?
So I'm on Instagram as the Messy Allotmenteer, and just give me a like, and if you want to find out any more about bees, I'm more than happy for you to send me a question.
Fantastic, thank you very much.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef Scott with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
Hi, it's Scott here with this week's recipe. And this week we have a courgette and feta dip with mint and chilli. A refreshing, cool-tasting dip, perfect for a summer's day snack. It's very simple to make and has few ingredients. The key to this recipe is in the cooking of the courgette. They need to be cooked hard and fast or slowly cooked, as both ways will drive off excess water and intensify the flavour. So, let's head to the kitchen and hear how it's made. As usual, you can find this recipe and others on the Veg Grower Podcast.co.uk and on my Instagram page, Seed to Table Plot 13. For this recipe, you will need 3 courgettes or 500 grams, sliced down the middle lengthways, 3 cloves of garlic sliced, 100 grams of feta cheese, 1 red chilli diced, 5 grams of chopped mint and the juice of 1 lemon. Method. First we need to salt the courgette by sprinkling them with a pinch of salt and letting them sit in a colander for 30 minutes. Now pat the courgette dry and place in a roasting tray and top with the sliced garlic and a drizzle of olive oil and roast in a preheated oven set at 200 degrees Celsius for 40 minutes. Once ready, allow to completely cool. Now in a food processor or with a stick blender, blend together the courgette and feta until it resembles a hummus-like texture. Now, Add this to a serving dish and then mix the chilli and mint together with a little olive oil and lemon juice and drizzle this over the top. And that's the recipe done, and that's it from me this week.
Now, one of the other talks that I've managed to sit down and listen today is from Lee, the bearded grower. Not Lee Connolly, another Lee. Lee, what's your background?
My background, so I'm a theatre maker. So I still run a theatre and arts charity. That's my background. That's what I still do actually professionally. I'm just now moving my sort of professional theatre background into the horticultural world. So still thinking about well-being, but it's now gardening for well-being rather than theatre for well-being. So yeah, that's my background.
I think that brings quite a nice element, because I've always said that to educate and inform people, they need to be entertained at the same time. And that's something I've noticed you do quite well on Instagram.
Well, that's very kind. I know. I mean, my Instagram page really is a reflection of me as the performer. You know, my people that know about me, my mental health journey, my poor mental health started as a child, and it was theatre that helped me deal with that trauma, really, being someone else, being on stage, making people laugh. And really what I've done is I've sort of used that and blended it with the gardening. It was the gardening that helped me during COVID deal with the mental health challenges that I'd faced then. And I've sort of blended the two together, really. And I don't take myself too seriously. And I think actually when you're trying to engage with people, explain to them, how to garden or how to design gardens, I think it's about being accessible. And I think the performer element is a tool I can use that helps people understand and engage with it more.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree. It's something I've been talking about quite recently on the podcast as well, funny enough. But one of the key things you also talk about is mental health, which is something very close to my background as well. And is it your mental health growing up that made you go down this route as well?
Yes, it was. So I grew up with an alcoholic mum. Something I now talk about quite openly. Back then I would never have said those words. But that's a journey. That's a journey I've been on. And it was the pandemic so that sort of trauma that I'd suffered as a young child sort of came back tenfold during the pandemic. And luckily I just moved into a house with a garden with my wife. And it was the garden that was allowing me, to deal with that trauma again. So it's really fundamentally part of who I am, and again, it's not easy being able to sort of stand there and go, I suffer from anxiety, depression, PTSD. My mum's an alcoholic. It is hard and gets easier the more I do it. That's why that's why I love chatting to people and doing things like this on stage, is because it actually helps me deal with it again. It's almost like my therapy. I was saying to a lady earlier, me speaking to you about my background is also therapeutic to me, and that's what the theatre was doing as well. So, I'm waffling a bit now, but I hope that's sort of the answer, wasn't it?
What is it? Because again, I hear a lot of people say that gardening can help with mental health. And while I completely agree, my own journey has helped with that. I sometimes get worried it becomes under an umbrella that it's going to cure everyone's mental health issues. But what is it about gardening that does?
I think it's an interesting question, a hard question, I think, because it will do different things for different people. And I think there is this sort of term now, this whole idea of well-being. We're talking about that on stage as well. I think people, they see something and go, this garden can help you with your well-being. Well, it might and it might not, but actually what the garden can do is allow you just to reset, refocus, take yourself away from the stress of daily life. If you're going off into the shed for 10 minutes to pot something up, that can give you a moment just to reflect on your own well-being. Or it might be that actually it's providing you with a sensory experience, and that's doing more for your brain. You're surrounded by nice sounds, smells, tastes, and actually that's giving you, a tickle of the senses, so to speak, which can help calm your mood. There's stuff around putting your hands in the dirt, which I've done some videos about recently, and about the chemical process and the positive chemicals that are released when you come into contact with the soil. So there are scientific elements to it as well, but it is fundamentally different for everyone. We just know that getting outside and engaging with our natural world is powerful and important to all of us as human beings.
Yeah, I think that really does sum it up. It is a powerful tool to be used, absolutely. Now, you have got your own show coming up next week, which by the time this comes out will have a few days if anybody wants to book a ticket for. Tell us more about it and where can somebody buy tickets from?
Yeah, so that's called the Garden Gathering. So I've put this together on the Waitrose farm down in Hampshire on the Longstock estate, and it's a fundraiser. So I've brought together all of my gardening friends, well, not all of them, but a good selection of them, for a day of just horticultural fun, really. So there's plants for sale, there's food from the Waitrose farm shop, but there's talks, there's children's gardening activities, there's a soil station, and it's all as a fundraiser for Andover Mind, because on the estate, on the Waitrose estate, they run a Garden for Mind, which is a space where adult service users of Andover Mind can come and engage with horticulture to improve and support their well-being, mental health, but also improve their skills and confidence as well. So it's tickets available, £8. All of that goes to Andover Mind on beardygardener.com.
Fantastic. There'll be a link in the show notes if anybody is interested. Lee, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for the talk as well. As I said, really enjoyed it. So I look forward to seeing you next Saturday.
Thank you so much.
Well, of course, no visit to Gardener's World Live would be right without a visit to the plant experts.
Hey.
And I'm here with the legendary podcaster, Mr. Saul Walker, who's actually flying solo this year.
It's a bit weird, isn't it? My right hand lady is not here. Lucy is not well, Miss Lucy Chamberlain. So I am having to answer questions on both ornamental and fruit and veg. And I'm feeling a bit fraudulent. So... But she is still behind us. She has printed out her lovely face on the sign. So she is here in picture, if not person.
Yeah, well, we hope that she gets well soon, of course.
She will.
Have you had, because of course you're sitting on the plant expert stand today, you get lots of people asking questions. Have you had any interesting questions today?
Do you know, the one thing that is coming up quite a bit this year is the buddleia aphid. And it's quite new, and it's especially prevalent this year. And I know that the RHS is looking into it, actually. They've got a bit of a research project going in to see about how it spreads, what its control methods are, etc. And what you see is, at this time of year, June, the buddleia is quite deformed. You get little yellow patches, and the stem gets a bit contorted, and the flowers don't look great. The problem is that's when you've seen the damage, but it's actually happened weeks ago, 6 weeks, 2 months ago, when the aphid has attacked, when the leaves are smaller, and as they grow it expresses the damage, and that's when you spot it. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and I've had probably about 10 people come up with it. So I think that's the big pest problem this year. Be interesting to see how that one continues for next year and see if it becomes a problem, because buddleias, as we all know, are pretty bomb-proof. Yeah. It's one of those plants you always suggest, especially for pollinators, and you hope that they wouldn't have something wrong with them. But, you know, that's the world we live in these days, especially with the changing climate, the fact that we move plants all around the world, the fact that we move humans all around the world. These pests and diseases come from other parts of the planet, and they can affect us. So it'll be interesting to see how that one goes.
Because there's another pest that's making an appearance that I've heard of, the Colorado beetle.
Yes. Yeah, we've got the guys over the way from us, actually, from the Planet Health, from DEFRA, and they're talking about all kinds of beetles over there that can come in, and that's mainly a pest of crops.
Yes.
So we're looking at food security in this way. So, you know, we have to look out for these things, and we have to be a bit mindful of exactly what we, as gardeners especially, are bringing into the country. So if you're going abroad and you're tempted to bring back that plant as a souvenir, maybe just think again, because you could be bringing either a pest or even a disease. Some people have heard of Xylella. It's pretty prevalent in Europe. It is really starting to have lots of problems on olives, rosemaries, etc., and being real problems. So, you know, let's just be a bit mindful about what we're bringing into the country.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more tempting than when you are on holiday, Greece particularly.
Yeah.
I was out in Greece many years ago now, but they were selling olive trees and telling us how we could get them in.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Don't touch them. There's actually a requirement now at both this show and lots of other flower shows that you have to show that the olives you're bringing here have been in the country for 2 or 3 years plus, just to avoid problems with Xylella. So it's something we're very aware of in the industry, but maybe the home gardener is not quite as aware of yet, and they can cause it to come into the country. So just got to be a bit more careful with what material we're we're bringing in.
So what other questions have you had today?
Yeah, figs. Figs have been on the. Everyone seems to want to grow a fig, maybe for breakfast. I don't know. Bit of fig for a pudding. Honeyed figs, lovely, aren't they? And what's happening is lots of people are sort of putting them in pots. And though they do like constricted roots, they still do like a little bit more, nutrition, a little bit more water, and they do a lot better in the open ground. Having said that, you still have to constrict the roots.
Yeah.
So putting some flags down and making sure the roots are a bit more tighter in there will produce better fruit. But if you've got them in a pot, what you tend to find after about a year, the compost loses body, loses nutrition, and even a fig, which is a very gluttonous plant, can actually look a lot more sorry for itself, and it won't fruit.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do something, put it in the ground. If you want to put it in a pot, a largest pot, but make sure that you are the person providing all the water and all the nutrition for that pot. So you've got to put a regular routine in place to keep the moisture levels up and at least keep them fed.
Yeah. Again, my fig isn't looking the best at the moment. That dry spring we've had
Absolutely.
has caused quite a few issues with a lot of my potted plants.
And we're getting a lot of questions on that as well, that especially when it comes to pests, black fly seems to be quite prevalent this year, especially on things like cherries and top fruits. A lot of distorted growth out there. Again, not something to be fully worried about, as it's a bit more aesthetic and it can kill the tips of the new growth off. I've been just suggesting to people, just chop it off, get rid of the ugliness, hopefully get rid of some of the pest. The good thing about cherries, apples, and a lot of plants in Rosaceae is that they will put on a secondary amount of growth come about the end of July, August. So you will get a lot of growth coming through, and you hopefully won't get as many problems with the pests. So sometimes you just got to let people worry a little bit less. I can imagine you've got a new plant, you're a new grower, and you see all this distorted, horrible growth covered in black bugs. You think it's the end of the world, but sometimes it's just nature's balance, the way nature's doing stuff.
Yeah, but nature's looked after itself for hundreds of years before man came along.
Absolutely, yeah. If nature wanted to wipe out all the plants on the planet, it would be doing itself a disservice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Any other questions that you've had that have really stuck out?
Yeah, we've had a few from new growers on going into buying a new house and then having plants sort of thrust on them in some ways. A lot of evergreens, big shrubs, things that haven't been pruned. And it's quite an interesting thing I've been thinking about is that some people who have never had a house before, or gardening is not really second nature to them, are then given this space that's probably been grown by someone else or misgrown by someone else, and then they have to sort of put their own mark on it. And it's surprising how hesitant they are with actually making changes, pruning, editing out stuff. And I can understand that. You've bought into this garden and you think, God, I'm going to ruin it if I, take out a tree or prune out this. What I will say is that gardening is part growth and part destruction. As a proper garden, every year we are causing pruning, we are taking things out, moving things about. So don't worry about it too much. Just make sure you're doing things at the proper time of year, you're pruning correctly, you're editing for a reason, whether you want to put your own mark onto the garden, whether you're trying to get more light into an area, whether you're trying to create more borders. I always say, if you're going into a new garden, there's a lot of lawn, create more borders, plant more plants. It's a good thing. So, new homeowners, new gardeners, don't be so worried. Although I do understand that if you don't know about these things, it's quite foreign. But part of gardening is learning, isn't it? It's part making the mistakes, learning about how they work, and then doing things differently in the future.
Yeah, I've always said we learn more from our mistakes than we learn from our successes.
That's a motto for life, I think, Richard, to be honest.
True. Obviously, we're at Gardeners World Live, which is a show you attend pretty much every year.
I think this is the 10th year, 8th show, 10th year if we take out the COVID years. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on it this year?
It's really good. The gardens, I don't know if you've had a chance. I know you're here for 2 days, Richard, so you generally only get to see a part of the show each day. But if you've been out to see the gardens, best standard I have seen in years.
Yeah.
We've got some absolutely fabulous show gardens out there. Really good showcase gardens that are almost show gardens in their own right. And there's so many beautiful boards. They had to split the judging team into two just to be able to get round them all in a day to get those medals awarded. So some fabulous designs out there, and some really running water this year. Lots of waterfalls and rills and running water going through the gardens. That's always nice to see. Some really nice planting choices, a lot of structures as well. I think people are getting more confident with the use of buildings in gardens as well. So yeah, vintage year for the gardens. Obviously in the floral marquee, it's always full of plants for people to see. Obviously the International Orchid Show is here, and that's one of my big passions in life. So I've already purchased a few plants. Let's say the credit card has been used on getting a few plants there. But otherwise, it's the same great show that we have. It is one of the best shows for amateur professionals, a good mix of people, and lots of buying and being able to actually see the plants and then get them, rather than just think, oh, I might look that up later. You can actually buy the plants that you see on the displays.
Yeah, again, that whole thing about it being a garden show for every type of gardener has been running through what I've been saying today. So
yeah,
absolutely. What's your highlight though?
Oh, that's a hard one. I've got to say, I'm not a fuchsia guy.
Yeah.
Don't really grow the fancy fuchsias, but Rualan fuchsias that won Best in Show in the corner of the marquee is the best fuchsia display I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And even a lot of the older judges that have been doing this for 30, 40 years said they'd never seen a fuchsia display like it. The flowers are dripping. It's as if he's taken the flowers and then grown a plant with them. It's absolutely amazing display. So that's a big highlight of mine. Obviously the orchids, we won't mention them again. The orchid display, we won't mention them again. And inside the halls, there's some really interesting greenhouses. I'm always interested to see what people are bringing to greenhouses. There's a really interesting polytunnel display. I think it's eco polytunnels or something like that. And they're pretty hardcore polytunnels. Apparently they grow them in Scotland, and they can withstand those Scottish gales. So, pretty strong.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to keep rolling because somebody's just turned up with a camera and starting to film us as we're recording this. So I want to try and make it look busy. How's the podcast going?
It's going really well. We're on to 268 episodes. What's this, the 6th year? We're still trying to catch up, Richard, but it's not going to happen. Not going to happen. I've got to say, we're... obviously, Lucy's now switched away from being a head gardener. Happened about a year and a half ago. So it's actually quite interesting to see the evolution of her gardening life. She's obviously written the book as well earlier in the year. So getting her thoughts and I was going to say struggles. What's the word? Maybe hiccups occasionally with that process is always very interesting. We're very honest on the podcast. We try and bring an actual recreation of what we're up to. The last episode was quite interesting because Lucy was ill, so I had to do a solo, and I decided to take everyone on a bit of a road trip to a few of the societies that I was. So I tried some new recording techniques, Richard. I'm sure your listeners don't want to hear about the technicals of podcasting, but there is a lot of places that you can hang microphones and make things sound a bit more authentic. So really interesting, and we're really enjoying doing it. So I think many more years of podcasting are ahead.
That's what we like to hear. So as always, it's been an absolute pleasure talking
and you,
to you.
Richard.
We'll see you again on another show.
See you next year. Hey,
maybe before then. We may see you on one of the other shows.
Oh, that would be good, Richard. Anyway, enjoy your second day.
You too. Well, there's a lot to get through tonight, and there was a lot to unpack from that one show. Got to say, I had a really, really good time. I absolutely love Gardener's World Live. It is a big show. Obviously, I'm there, I'm working, and I still need 2 days to get round the whole show. But it is worth it. It really is worth it. I look forward to going every single year. And as I said, it's absolutely one of my favourite shows. If you're looking to go next year, I highly recommend going and checking it out. Now, I'm going to keep the outro a little bit short tonight because it's been a long podcast and I don't want to keep you any longer. But thank you so much for listening. We will be back again next time, but please do follow us on social media and don't forget to rate and review and consider becoming a member of our supporters club. Until next time, please take care.